morning, everyone. Welcome to a session of the ENTI 407 class at the Haskayne School of Business, University of Calgary. In this session, we're honored to have a guest speaker with us, Mr. Stephen Campbell, who I've described as a trailblazer in the no-code space and a no-code entrepreneur that I personally am learning a lot from, and I hope the rest of you will be able to learn from him as well. So this course, Technology for Entrepreneurs, has been offered at the University of Calgary for 2 to 3 years now, and we do a lot of no-code stuff in this course. We've started, the initial versions of it did not have Bubble, but now for a couple of years, we've been building Bubble apps as our main individual project. And the students in this class will be getting started on their Bubble apps pretty much after this session. So thank you, Stephen, for joining us. Please, I would like to ask you to begin by telling us about yourself and just describing your journey a little bit for us.
Okay, so thanks for inviting me, first of all, Professor Keyhani. It's a pleasure for me to be here. The first time giving a talk like this, and I'm happy to share my experiences and some of the things that I've learned. So as you mentioned, my name is Stephen Campbell. I'm a Jamaican. I'm from the island, a small island in the Caribbean called Jamaica. We're known for our athletes, sports. We're known for our culture and our food and our music, right? It's a tourist destination. Not so much technology, but we have a lot of innovators here, and we have accomplished other things even over the years. So that's a little bit about my background. I studied chemical and process engineering at University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago, another small island in the Caribbean. And I got my degree and started working in the process industry. I've had experiences in the oil and gas industry, the bauxite industry, and I've worked on chemical plants. And I kind of transitioned from that experience because I wanted to have more time and to have a lot more impact based on the skills and talents that I know I have. So that's how I ended up on this journey in entrepreneurship and no code, which I'll talk a lot more about as Professor Keyhani leads this discussion.
Thank you, Stephen. We are in an oil and gas town here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. A lot of people in our province are in this process of trying to get into the technology industry, software industry, sometimes moving away from oil and gas, sometimes from other previous careers. Is this hard to do? I mean, you don't have a computer science degree. What was this hard to get into?
Okay, so I would say it was pretty difficult. I would say very hard, depending on how you look at it. But for me, it was, first of all, a difficult decision, because I had to take the decision to put a pause on my career, the thing that I invested 3 years. I mean, I was sponsored by our main oil and gas company here in Jamaica to do this degree, and I got a full scholarship to do this degree. So there's a lot of investment behind what I studied. But I did 3 years in the industry, and I had a feel of what it was really about. So the decision to move was very hard. I took a year to just think about the decision. And I have a family as well, so I had to think about that. Because as you mentioned, I don't have a computer science degree, but I started researching And I realized that where technology was in the world, that perhaps I didn't have to have a computer science degree, but I needed enough skills to basically make money online. And it would take a process of learning and growing and developing these skills. So I decided that I would do it. And I would say in the first year, I was just exploring, because I didn't know which aspect of, internet entrepreneurship I wanted to go into. I definitely knew that I wanted to do online business, but I didn't know which area. But then I was doing WordPress, I was doing, design stuff, and I was working with a few local persons doing small contracts with WordPress. And I kind of stumbled upon nocode on Twitter, and I started fooling around with, so a few no-code apps like Card at first, and I've eventually found Bubble, and just using the tool, I realized that tech was at a place where you didn't really have to know everything, but you just had to have a core set of skills and use the platforms as a launching pad.
Awesome, thank you. A couple of cool things that came up were that you had an exploratory phase, which I think is really important. That you exposed yourself to opportunities by, for example, being on Twitter and following the trends on Twitter. Those are really important things that I think we can learn from. One thing I'm curious though, why didn't you think about applying for a job in a tech company? Why were you adamant on entrepreneurship and online business right away?
So as I mentioned, I'm still based in Jamaica, and tech in Jamaica is not as dynamic, I would say, as in other, first world countries, and it would require a lot more rigid qualifications to get into tech in that way. So I would probably have to go back to school to study and have a degree in probably software engineering or computer science, or kind of just develop the skills, like, go all into coding and develop the skills over a longer period of time to be able to have the body of work to apply for a job. And also I was kind of 9 to 5 averse. Like, I didn't want to go back into more of a routine and that kind of thing, because that's one of the other reasons why I chose to go into tech. Not only because I love it, I really do love tech and I think it's very good, but I think the freedom part of it, the portion that allows you to do what you want with your time, you set your own schedule, that was one of the reasons why I chose this path as well. And I thought that, going right into thinking about a job would kind of veer me away from my passions. Yeah.
That's, again, a very important issue. I have this feeling that the world is moving, well, it was moving slowly, but now maybe because of the pandemic, it's moving faster toward this arrangement where we realize that 9 to 5 jobs are just one possible package of value creation that people can do for the world. And there are many other possible ways to achieve this. So thank you so much for that. So tell us about the entrepreneurial experiments that you did. How many have you done so far? What were the first ones? Yeah, how did it go?
That is very interesting because, as I mentioned, I started out freelancing first. And, that is also time intensive. And I did a few independent contracts with some small companies in tech, but not as a tech person really, but customer support. So I was learning what would happen in the back end, customer facing. So from there, I kind of launched out with a few small ideas. I remember launching nocode.domains, which was a small, just a landing page with like a list of domain names in the no-code space that you could actually list your domain name and have somebody who is interested reach out and try to buy that domain name. So that was like one of the first websites that I did. It was really a web app. And I learned a few things about, Bubble and about how to set up a page and how to take customer information and how to set up, like email support and so on. And from there, I started thinking about how do I make money though? Because the first few projects like didn't make any money or made, so little that it wasn't significant. And I started an affiliate site called No Code Affiliate, where persons could set up their affiliate program with this third-party tool that at the time it was, I'm not remembering the name, but it allows you to integrate like an affiliate program into your website. And it was just a link that you would click, and once you sign up for them, I would get a commission from that. And it did generate a few sales, surprisingly. And, once I saw that, I got more confidence to move into other things. So I really had liked AI, artificial intelligence, and I wanted to do something in that space. But I was thinking, hey, maybe I have to do a degree, maybe I have to do this course or a boot camp. And, I got access to OpenAI's GPT-3. That's the most powerful machine learning algorithm that allows you to generate text. And it's trained on, so many parameters. So I got access and I didn't know how to use it because it was for programmers. So I kind of figured out how to get it to work with Bubble. And that was, at that time, it was so, like unprecedented. It was so great that it created a lot of traction online, and persons started asking me like, how did you do this? And once I got that question, I did a course, and then I sold that course online, and that generated a lot more income and allowed me more time to invest into other things, and brought me to where I am right now. So it was a number of different projects, one after the other, that led me to where I am today.
Awesome. I love this process. You weren't planning to create a course. You weren't planning to sell a course. You were working to build software. But then suddenly you decided that, no, it's worth my time to right now build a course product and sell that. What was the indication to you? Like, you're saying that people asked you for it, but how did you really, why did you think you could actually sell that course? Like, did you have access to a market of people that would buy that, or you just thought if I post it on Twitter, people will come and buy it? Like, how did you get access to that market?
So it was so interesting to me. At that time, I didn't have a lot of followers at all. Like I still don't have a lot of followers, but that doesn't really matter. I have like 2,000 followers now. But at that time, I think I had maybe 500 followers, and I wasn't even thinking about the market. What I was thinking about was how lacking the information was online, because I wanted to integrate GPT-3 with Bubble, but I hadn't found anybody that did it before. And I couldn't find the information. So I was like, and I was going through the Bubble forums and so on. And I was like, maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe I need to put something out there. And so I saw an opportunity to actually get this knowledge out there. And it was really just a test, because I was saying, hey, I'm not going to put more than 3 hours into this thing. So I literally recorded using my laptop camera with Loom. And I just kind of walked through like how to get it done. And in a few hours, had up like a Gumroad landing page, and I put a preview video on there just to see if anybody would be interested. And within like sharing it on Twitter, like it got so much traction, and I believe it got to like $1,000 in the first few days, you know, and I was like, hey, this is significant. So I started, you know, improving it, changing up certain things on the landing page, adding testimonials and so on. And, you know, throughout the course of the time that I was pushing it, we did like $5,000. And even to this day, like people would click the link and buy the course. You know, I would, you know, like on a monthly basis, I have a few sales even to this day. And I haven't changed anything in terms of the content. So it was really just an experiment. I didn't actually expect that it would, you know, this would have been the result, but it was just trying things and keep on putting things out there and see what the community says, you know. So that was basically it.
So a few things in your answer there that I think are worth emphasizing. First, to create a course really doesn't take that much difficulty. Like you can build it with free tools like Loom, or just build a Gumroad page to sell it. It's really not that difficult. You don't need complex tools. And another interesting thing is just the economics of digital products has always been very interesting to me, because you build something once, and then once it's created, no matter how many people wherever in the world at whatever time want to buy it, there's no additional cost to you for them to buy it. All you did was just create that initial product. It's in the economics literature, they call this the zero marginal cost of production phenomena. And it's a very, very interesting aspect of digital businesses. It applies to digital software and information products, but specifically for information products, because they don't require that much customer support or anything.
Right.
It's even more pronounced of an effect for them. So thank you for that, Stephen. So you never, like for these entrepreneurial experiments that you did, you never thought about going after venture capital or fundraising for these, or going after hiring co-founders or employees? Tell me about your thinking there.
You know, I would have to say that I didn't really know much about the tech space or tech business. And I think when talking to people, they don't actually realize how much you don't need to know, right? I didn't know about like going after venture capital or hiring co-founders. I was just kind of, you know, sticking it to the man and just pushing online, however far that I could get, you know. So I didn't actually expect this outcome, although I was working towards it. So if you mention like VC, that's something that I would have learned about getting into the tech space online, like reading blogs, listening to podcasts, listening to makers talk. I was like, oh, okay, then VC exists. But I wasn't thinking about raising money really, because, you know, it just wasn't part of what I was thinking about, although that is generally the direction when starting a business. You need capital and so on. But I also knew about bootstrapping. Like I would watch like a whole documentary on how Microsoft came to be, you know, how these companies came to be, how these founders kind of started stuff in college or in, you know, their dorm rooms, and it became this thing. So I was kind of more on that side. And thinking about a co-founder, I was like, who would I really reach out to? Because before being in the community, I was just in my room, kind of just trying to figure it out, listening to podcasts and trying to see how I could extract as much information as possible. So it never occurred to me that, you know, I would reach out to a co-founder or try to get capital. But once I launched, and shipped what I was building, persons started to reach out, and I would consider this because, some persons would want to acquire what I was working on. Or, this one guy I met on LinkedIn, I put an idea out there and he said, hey, I want to give you $5,000 to build this, and he would get a certain percentage of the equity. And at the time I was like, that's really small, but it showed me that someone was just interested in me just throwing an idea out there. They wanted to invest. So initially I wasn't really thinking about it, but now I actually have a business partner and I'm more involved in, collaborating and building, bigger things.
Awesome. Have you ever thought about approaching these new alternative financing type of funds that specifically target bootstrap entrepreneurs, like Tiny Seed or Hustle Fund, I think, are a couple of famous ones. I think they give you like $100,000 for like 10% of your business. They have different models, but they target like individual bootstrapped entrepreneurs that are not going after venture capital and are very early stage. Have you ever thought about going after that kind of funding?
Yeah, I have thought about it. I mean, I've heard of Pipe as well. I think you can sell your MRR and get like the capital upfront and so on. I have thought about it. But why I haven't gone after it is I think that when it's very, very early, and this is what I've learned from experience, when it's very, very early and you take capital or give up a certain percentage of equity, you just don't know, where it will go. You just don't know how big it will get. If you're thinking that, hey, this just might be another project, this is just, it won't get big, then maybe, yeah. But if you have a vision that this is what I'll be working on for the next 10 years, or I want this to be extremely significant, how I think about it is that I would have to get it to a place where it's fully functional, the product market fit is there, I have a customer base already, I have a foothold in the industry, and there is some great value and there is some acceptance within the community that, hey, this person is doing something significant. At that point, I'd probably go after funding, because I think there'll be a better valuation and there'll be a better, there'll be better metrics to point towards the performance of the business, like what you're doing. So you get better, a better valuation at that point.
Thank you. One thing I'd like to clarify for our students in case they don't know, when Stephen is referring to MRR, it stands for monthly recurring revenue. A lot of SaaS or software as a service type of businesses have recurring revenue because they're subscription based. People subscribe to them and they pay a recurring amount every month or every year. And now recently, an alternative financing model has started where I think it's called revenue financing, where you can go to the financer and say, I need a large chunk of money right now. And what I can show for it and what is that I have monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue. And that shows that I can pay back this loan. I think mostly it's a loan that it doesn't take equity, but sometimes it can be in the form of money that is exchanged for equity as well. But yeah, it's basically a loan that is financed because you have revenue. That's how the financer decides that they can lend you money. So thank you for that, Stephen. Can you tell us about what were among the different projects that you've done, what do you think were the biggest failures, and what have you learned from them?
Biggest failures. I would say I rarely ever count failures as failures, really, because I think everything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's like Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And it's not all negative, right? So I'm trying to fish in my mind for failures, and it's very difficult for me because I kind of have a positive outlook on most things. Like something not working out is really just a redirection. And I think I have made some bad calls, you know, in the early stages of what I'm working on now. But I don't see it as a failure, but I see it as just redirection. Like it's necessary. I never tried to think that I regret something or this went wrong and it shouldn't have happened, but it's kind of just redirection. And that's how business is, you know. I would say I've been slow on learning a lot of the key principles of business, and I've been slow in moving towards, you know, formalizing the business structure. And I would say that has held us back. But why I've moved slow is because, and it can be seen as selfish, is because I want a particular outcome from the business that plays into my goals, right? I don't want to go into business and then my goals gets pushed aside for the goals of these new goals that I'm trying to meet someone's expectations. So because the market, everybody raises 2 million, right? Or everybody raises this money at this stage. I become obsessed with that notion and push my goals aside, and I want to raise this. So I've kind of been slow and it has held us back, but I think eventually it will work out.
Awesome. A few key points in there that I want to emphasize. I think one of the reasons why you don't feel a big sense of failure is because you haven't done any super costly experiments. You've done low cost experiments, and that's an amazing thing that technology lets you do these days, that you can run lots of low cost experiments. It's a very, very powerful phenomenon. It's very important because there's so much randomness and uncertainty in entrepreneurship that you need to do lots of experiments to be able to figure things out, to learn. And now that you could do them low cost, it basically results in all of your failures being so cheap or so inexpensive that they are basically, the learning value is so high that you can barely even call them failures. They're just learning experiences basically, and that tell you what not to do or what direction to go in, or help you build skills for the next experiment. So that's one item I think that's noteworthy in what you just said, Stephen. Another thing is that I love how you described this idea that you want it to fit with your personal goals. And I think that's another reason why people might not necessarily go after venture capital funding or investors or co-founders. This is what I call side hustle entrepreneurship. And it's like, it actually, for many years, people called something like this lifestyle entrepreneurship.
Right.
Because it helps, the aim of it is to help your lifestyle. Like if you don't want a 9-to-5 job, if you have certain obligations in your day with, I don't know, caring for children or family members, that you want to build your professional work around that. They called it lifestyle entrepreneurship. But the interesting thing was most lifestyle entrepreneurship was either not tech, was not software, or was not scalable type of businesses. what's happened in recent years and is really interesting is that people are able to pursue scalable software opportunities because of
Right.
the economics of digital products and because they are so easy to build now with no code tools and other tools, um, that people are able to pursue those scalable opportunities and still keep them as these bootstrapped side hustle style lifestyle businesses. And that's I think also a very important phenomenon.
Right.
So Stephen, tell us about your successes. What are the which experiments have turned out to be really well or better performing than you expected? And what is the status of those businesses right now?
So what I'm working on currently is tiny acquisitions. I'm very passionate about this project that I'm working on. I would say it has been the most successful. I mean, we just hit 5,000 users the other day, and we started in June of 2021, right? And we have done like 5 figures GMV, and we have a decent valuation. Let me say that we have a decent valuation, and you know, I've had
It would be
significant.
so meta if you sold tinyacquisitions.com on tinyacquisitions.com.
I don't think it will sell there because I think maybe the sale price would be so much bigger than a tiny acquisition.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we've had very interesting persons reach out to us to acquire the business, and it's a very good indication of the value of the business. We have had persons reach out for investment, and we have turned down everything because what we have seen in the community, in the space and online, is that tiny acquisitions is extremely significant and it's extremely needed. So I would say it has every expectation that I had for it was exceeded. Like I have to be setting new goals, new targets, and so on. So where we are now, approaching 1 year, I would say we have slowed down a bit, but we are still moving at a good pace based on our new targets and our new goals. Gonna be launching version 2 of Tiny Acquisition soon. This is the first place I'm saying it.
Nice exclusive announcement.
Where we'll be competing in the M&A space with SaaS model, and kind of allowing entrepreneurs to get exits at 100K and less. So at first we kind of allowed makers to get exits at 5K, 10K. Now we see the need to expand and allow for a higher pricing cap. So, persons can sell digital assets, businesses, startups for up to 100K. And we are providing the framework and the platform to do just that right there on Tiny Acquisition. So I would say what I'm working on now and what we are working on as a team is extremely significant, and I'm extremely hopeful for a 1 year anniversary to hit the goals that we have set out. So we have been very successful so far.
Wow, less than 1 year since you started it. So tell me a bit about why you decided to start this project.
So I was just trying to solve my own problem because I built a bubble app and it kind of blew up. We got like 7,500 users and we had like over 100 paid users, and it was doing pretty okay. And we had like a steady MRR. And
Which app was that?
Pardon?
Which app was that?
That's Virtual Ghostwriter.
Virtual Ghostwriter.
So that app I built integrating GPT-3 with Bubble.
So it used GPT-3 to help you generate text. Okay.
Right. That's virtualghostwriter.com. But I was at a place where I wanted to work on something new, but I didn't want to put it out there that I was selling the app because, you know, we had a community, we had persons who really loved what we were doing, and I still had this emotional tie to the app. So I wanted to kind of hand it over to somebody who could take it to the next level, but without losing the leverage of saying, hey, I'm selling this app. So, you know, I thought about it. I was just hoping that someone would reach out and say, hey, I want to take this to the next level. And I went on a few marketplaces. I was looking around and I tried a few, but it wasn't what I was hoping for, because on those marketplaces, there's a focus around getting a valuation for what you have built and selling it for the price based on what it's worth. No, I hadn't run virtual ghostwriter for 6 months, you know, for over 6 months. So I was very young, you know, the data was very new. So there wasn't really any calculated value that I could put on it. It was just what I wanted to sell it for. So I realized these marketplaces they weren't really tailored for that. So I decided that I would build my own marketplace. Now, this was something I've never done before. It's a two-sided marketplace where I'd have to build a framework for buyers and sellers, and that communication, allowing buyers to pay, allowing sellers to receive the funds, allowing the exchange of the asset. And it wasn't something that I took on before, but I saw where Bubble, it was possible that I could do it with Bubble. And I committed about 4 weeks just to test the idea. So testing the idea for me is actually launching it, getting it to a point where it's functional, everything works. It's probably not very beautiful, but everything works. And I put it out there, I launched it, and, you know, persons started using it. You know, I saw a few acquisitions happen on it. I was like, hey. And then I had made this video advertising tiny acquisitions where I was advertising, like listing virtual ghostwriter. And like within a few days after I launched and put that video out there, someone came and acquired virtual ghostwriter from on tiny acquisitions. So that was like a light bulb moment for me, like, hey, this thing works. And it worked for me because I was trying to solve my own problem. Maybe there are other persons like myself who wanted this issue solved, and it turned out to be true. A lot of persons were like me, needing to get their projects liquidated.
Wow, awesome. So two-sided marketplaces, sometimes we call them platforms, are a very valuable type of business model, because basically the supply side is out there already. You don't have to decide for them what to build, what to create. They do it themselves. And the demand side is also out there already. You don't have to decide for them what to buy, and you don't buy it yourself. They buy it and they decide what to buy, and you just get like a fee usually in these transactions. The platform takes a fee on each transaction. So it's a very, very lucrative business model. Google, for example, does it with the App Store, and Apple does it with the App Store. Lots of different platforms do this kind of thing. Uber, for example, is a two-sided marketplace. It's very lucrative. But one of the challenges with platform business models is the famous chicken and egg problem, because the supply side doesn't want to join your platform unless the demand side is there. And the demand side doesn't want to join your platform unless the supply side is there. So it's like a chicken and egg problem, and it's always an issue about how to solve this in platforms. One of the ways to solve it is if you yourself are on one of the sides as an entity. Usually good platforms are built by one of the players on the supply side. So Google was a software developer, Apple was a software developer before they created the platform for other software developers to come and sell software. Uber started as a taxi business before it created a platform for everyone to offer taxi services. And this, again, is an interesting case for me that Stephen himself had a software that he was hoping to sell to get acquired. And he, as a supplier, knew what problems you were trying to solve, and he built the platform to actually solve that problem. This is super awesome, super interesting, and also super interesting for us that you, without a computer science degree, built a two-sided marketplace platform with Bubble. How long do you think, like, our students here are just going to start to learn Bubble? How long do you think it takes for them, starting from scratch, to get to a place where they can develop a full-fledged two-sided marketplace platform and deploy it online as the software?
Well, that probably would depend on the students. I know school is not one course and school is not one class, but it really takes time, commitment, right? And a certain level of passion. So I would say there's a learning curve, a huge learning curve, but the resources are there to overcome the learning curve. There's a huge community. I mean, I was working with a local developer the other day, and they had built out something, a coded application on another platform, using the framework of another framework. And because the community was lacking, like whenever they went into any issues, they couldn't get help, they couldn't find information, and they actually switched to Bubble, because of the community that's there. So the community really helped me to understand Bubble. So I'd say if it's a two-sided marketplace, maybe 8 weeks, maybe, depending on how much time you can give. I would say it's not possible to do something simple within a month or two, right? But it does require, commitment and learning how the platform works. I wouldn't say I'm just new to tech because I did IT in high school. I did some level of, just basic information technology, and I understand if then else, loops and, logical operators, basic mathematical understanding is necessary. So once that's there, I think with the community, it's kind of just natural. You'll eventually get to the finish line.
Yeah. I think, well, I have this experience. I started using Bubble, when was it? I think maybe January last year. And in a matter of a few months, although I spent a lot of time on it, depends on how much time you spend on it per day, but I was really passionate about a side project, working on it almost 3 to 4 hours every night when I had free time. In a matter of about 4 to 5 months, I was able to pretty much build 90% of the software that I wanted to build. And that's similar to Stephen. I didn't come from a zero background in coding. I had done some simulations in my research in the past, some statistical programming. So I knew some basics of coding. Which helps because you have to understand the logic of how software works to be able to build good no-code software. But that it's, even if you don't have those basics, it's pretty easy and quick to learn it. Like, there's so many tutorials and learning material online that if you really get into it, it's really a high investment, return on investment. Somebody in the no code Twitter recently tweeted about this. They said, I think Bubble is the highest return on investment skill you can learn today, of any possible skill. And that was, I think I kind of agree with that. Bubble and Webflow probably like the two of the leaders in that no code space. So Stephen, I love chatting with you and asking lots of questions, but I think the students are already getting excited to ask you some questions themselves. So I think I'll open it up to the floor, and I think we'll start with Hayden. Hayden, you've put a question here in the chat. Do you want to quickly turn on your microphone and ask?
Yeah, sure. So basically my question is, what would you say are the best books, the best content that we have available to start learning the fundamentals of no code?
So there are a number of communities online, no code communities, and I would say most of them are centralized around Twitter. There is this podcast, No Code, No Problem, hosted by Ryan Meyer. He hosts a podcast where he brings on no code makers and they kind of talk about, how they got started or what they're working on and so on. So I think that's a great resource, as well as following a few persons on Twitter. I'd recommend, depending on what type of platform you'd want to use, if it's just building a landing page or actually building a web application, you generally want to go after persons who are building in public and doing that every day. And most of them are on Twitter, I can tell you. YouTube as well. YouTube has a few no-code makers on there. You can follow Doc Williams. Doc Williams has a platform for makers and he talks about no-code a lot. On Twitter, you can find persons by just typing in the hashtag no code, and there's a wealth of resources there, so it's really following persons in the community.
Okay, and who would you say is the most influential figure for yourself? Who's been the biggest influence?
I would say maybe Pieter Levels, his name is Pieter Levels. On Twitter, he's at Levels.io, Levels.io. He is Dutch and he's working on Nomad List and RemoteOK.io. He's kind of the person that I look to the most because he's bootstrapped his startup to $1 million, over 100K every month. And it's basically a one-man business. I'm sure he has contractors and persons who help out, but he's the main person building everything. And he kind of has a huge following. He's written a book. And just to hear him speak about the process, it really motivates me because it aligns with some of the goals that I have in my process as well.
Pieter Levels is awesome. I've put links to two of his recent podcast interviews on indie hackers in the chat. He's also one of those people that is just doing it all alone, no co-founders, no fundraising. And again, similar to how Stephen is pursuing it for his lifestyle. That's the way that Pieter Levels is doing it as well. Brad, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah. I was wondering, what are some of the most exciting no-code projects that you've come across from other people in the space?
I would say Makerpad. Makerpad is one of, I would say, interesting ones that I have come across because they actually, the founder, Ben, is it Ben?
Tossel?
Yes, Ben Tossel. Is it Tossel? Yeah. Yeah. He actually started with just a simple right? And he eventually got it acquired by Zapier. And that was the most interesting thing. When he posted what the first page was when he launched, It's amazing what it is now. So it's makerpad.co. And I would say that that's the most interesting no-code project that's possibly out there. You have a few others like nocodefounders.com as well. If I can think about any, those are the most impressive ones to me right now.
Bubble itself has a showcase on their website, and they have an app of the week or app of the day. Also, that they highlight some of the good apps that are being created with Bubble. Stephen, I want to ask you a little bit more about GPT-3. So you built software with the most advanced AI, one of the most advanced AIs that humanity has ever created. You built software with it, and you were able to get that software acquired. Do you know like anything about the mathematics behind machine learning or the computer science behind GPT-3? How did you do that?
I don't know, and it's pretty hidden, like how it actually works. But what was interesting to me is that the technology available via an API call. So if you're a developer or you're a no-coder, you have to still use the technology via the API calls. That's just it. So when I realized that, I didn't have to know programming. I just had to know how to handle APIs. And that is really the only point of communication with their software. Outside of, I think they have fine tuning in their documentation where you can make some adjustments, but it's still via the API call. So it's just one point of contact with the software, and you're leveraging the entire power of that tool via an API call. So I didn't try to understand how it was working. I didn't try to figure out the neural networks and all those things. But I just realized what it was, and I read their documentation, and they had a few examples of how to use it. And I was like, it's pretty interesting. I could do this. And, I was motivated by people building with it. Persons built landing page builders with GPT-3. Like, it would type out full landing pages, and persons build like idea generation software. And I was like, I could do this with Bubble. So I kind of just leveraged the API, and it kind of just worked out.
Awesome. On GPT-3, there's actually a couple of good books. One of them hasn't been released yet, but the pre-release version is available somewhere online. I think if you pay Wiley a fee. Another one is called Exploring GPT-3. I'm looking that way because I have it on my shelf. Exploring GPT-3, you can actually order it off Amazon and start learning to work with GPT-3 and build products with it right away. And the level of knowledge it takes to read and understand that book, you guys already have it. So you can buy that book, Exploring GPT-3, and start building software with one of the most advanced AIs in the world right away. We actually, in this class, I showed the students an example of how they can build software with AI using APIs. We used genderize.io, which is a relatively simple machine learning tool that guesses the gender of a person based on their name. And the students here used an API of Genderize to basically incorporate it into a software tool that they built in class in just a few minutes. So we kind of have an idea of how you can access a powerful AI through an API without knowing or having to know what it does in the behind the scenes. But yeah, unlike Bubble or no code tools where your best, there's no good books and you really need to scour the internet and all the online resources and YouTube channels, because it's very much hands-on learning. Like you have to see what people do and they have to show you their screens, and it's very much hands-on learning. But with GPT-3, there's actually a couple of book options available. There we have. Osareme, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen, for joining our class today. I just had a question about tiny acquisitions. Like, if you were thinking maybe 5 or 10 years down the line, where do you kind of envision the company growing to, or some of your future plans there?
10 years, I think 10 years on the line, I think would be maybe a unicorn, given the growth projections that I have calculated and based on, you know, the vision that we have. But outside of that, I think definitely it's already something in the community for persons who can't reach to decide, like, all right, let me share some information. Most of our sellers happen to be from India. And what we found is that India has a lot of projects. You know, they are technical people and they do a lot of projects, but generally they don't have a lot of access to get it sold or to generate a lot of income from it and so on. And so what we have found is that tiny acquisitions is helping these people to get eyes on their projects, get eyes on what they're building. And interestingly enough, most of our buyers are from the USA and Canada and more European countries. And so it's kind of a decent exchange from one region to the next, where I think in any case, our platform will always provide value for persons who really need, they have a technical skill, but they probably don't have a lot of access to funding and, you know, that environment. So 5 to 10 years down the line, if we're still here, if we're still working at it, if we're not, you know, gobbled up by a huge company, we will continue to build and continue to help the community to liquidate projects and get persons acquired.
One thing I'd like to know, Stephen, I know like you mainly build your softwares with Bubble, and that's your go-to tool for the core of it. But now, like with something that's getting as big as Tiny Acquisitions is getting, it's a business, right? It's not just the software. So what are the other tools that you're using to run this business? Are there any other software tools that do cool things for you in various aspects of Tiny Acquisitions?
So very early, I realized that one of my weak points was design. You know, I really could put workflows together and build logical, you know, steps, but design was a weak point for me. So after collaborating with my now business partner, he introduced me to a designer that we are now working full time with, and that designer works with Figma. And that's when I found out about the power of Figma, because although we're using Bubble, there is an API built in that we can use just the API keys and the Figma ID and import entire Figma pages onto Bubble, right? So Figma is extremely useful and powerful to what we're doing. So we started out with design pages from airdev.co, and they're a tool kind of built on top of Bubble, and they deal with design components, but we're changing out most of those pages to Figma design pages. And, you know, Figma, you can export the code behind the page, and it's more robust, I would say. It's more robust. It doesn't break as easily. And we have found a lot of value in using Figma. I would say Stripe is another pillar for what we build on. Whether we are building with no code or otherwise, Stripe is what we use for payment processing. And it's interesting how we have use Stripe to kind of create an escrow scenario. So once a buyer comes and pays for a project, we hold the funds until the exchange happens, until the assets are exchanged. And then the buyer actually engages with our platform and says, hey, I've received everything. Please release the funds to the seller. And we use Stripe to collect, hold, and send funds to the seller. And we take out our fee from that. So Stripe is another powerful tool that we use. Without Stripe, I would say we'd have a lot of difficulties. There are other platforms out there, but we really value Stripe as, you know, the documentation is well written, and it integrates very nicely with Bubble, and I think generally it integrates well. And it's a lot of APIs as well, which I love to work with. So it works out well for us. So Figma and Stripe, I would say, two main pillars to help us with our business.
Do you use any tools for the marketing side, like emails, social media? Are you using any tools to manage those?
So right now, we are still collecting data and experimenting with marketing. So we've done some marketing through Facebook and Twitter, and you know we've kind of reached out to other influential persons in the space. You know, we've been on podcasts before, but we don't have any tool. I was experimenting with that tool the other day. Meet Otis. It's a startup that creates ads through Facebook and Google, etc. So I was experimenting with it, but we haven't settled on any marketing tool per se. But we have kind of just done the traditional, and really word of mouth marketing is kind of what we're pushing now.
If I could ask maybe one last question, it would be, if you were in the position of our students, maybe close to graduation from an undergraduate degree at university, what do you think are some good skills to build and some entrepreneurial experiments to try for someone who's a student?
I would say probably I always say do some introspection first. Try to find what you're interested in, what you'd love to do for a very long time, and what you're passionate about. Good skills I'm finding now are accounting skills, learning accounting, learning about LLCs, learning about tax, in those things. And, because I love to build, I love going online and just tinkering, but there's a business part of things that, is so important. It's very important. And I think accounting skills are good. Learning tax laws. If you can find the time to read as a student, that would be good. I know you guys are entrepreneurial students. I'm sure that is in there somewhere. But building skills as well, becoming resourceful with getting things done without having to, getting everything done yourself. Every aspect of what you want to do, dabble in it, learn it, and develop like a building muscle, a maker muscle that you'd want to build everything for yourself so that you at least know about it.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, one of the aspects of being a solopreneur or trying to do these side hustles where you're not getting help from a team of co-founders or you're not getting investment is that you as an entrepreneur end up having to do so many of the functions of a business yourself. and you have to learn a lot of new things. And each business is unique. You have to get into the particular aspects. For example, some science and technology-based businesses that come out of university spinoffs, they suddenly realize that IP, intellectual property law, is so important, and they have to learn so much about it and figure things out, various forms of contracts and IP issues. And they often think, well, I haven't learned this in school. But that's often the case. You don't get prepared for everything in school. Every specific business has various aspects that you need to learn from scratch, and you just what you have to learn in school is learn how to learn, really, and so that you can tackle any problem that comes at you in the future. Thank you so much, Stephen. I would like to invite everyone else in class to also give you a big thank you. You can use the reactions to clap for Stephen, or just unmute your microphone for a bit. We're getting a lot of thank you messages in the chat.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Prof. Thanks for the invite, and it was good sharing with all of you guys. Thank you for listening.